All right, welcome in. Happy Black Friday. We are 3 games into week 13 already. Thanksgiving Day is in the books, and that's where we're going to start this week. Our first topic for this week concerns 2 of those 3 games and really looking at one division, and that's the NFC North. The top 3 teams in that division now, the Vikings, the Packers, and the Lions are a combined 29-6. Pretty remarkable. And when you look at it, really good in the coaching department, really good in the quarterbacking department. And all 3 of those teams are relatively young in those areas. The Lions with Jared Goff and Dan Campbell, the Vikings with Sam Darnold and Kevin O'Connell, and of course the Packers with Matt LaFleur and Jordan Love. It's really organizational strength I think we've seen from those 3 teams. And we'll start with the early window on Thanksgiving and the job the Lions did. Now they looked again like the Detroit Lions over the first 2 quarters. They absolutely, positively were bludgeoning the Bears. And you looked at the yardage totals, the first down totals, the time of possession. In every single category, this thing wasn't close. And then you got to the second half, and it wasn't. And I'm going to tell you why I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. No one's going to be perfect through an NFL season. No one's going to do what the Lions did to the Jaguars a couple of weeks ago, week in and week out. You're going to hit your bumps. You're going to have your clunkers. And I think being able to survive it is a trait that all the great teams have. This was a weird second half for the Lions. Injury after injury. That's a defense that already has been playing without Aiden Hutchinson. They're way down the depth chart at corner in the second half of that game. Their defensive line is taking hit after hit. DJ Reader goes out for a little bit there. Zadarius Smith goes down for a little bit there. And the Bears are able to come back. And I think we saw a lot of good things from Caleb Williams in the second half of that game. I think the Bears showed us a little something. Keenan Allen, a real pro. He may not be what he used to be, but really showed up big in the second half of the game. The Bears showed heart. They showed some resolve. In the end, the Lions showed championship mettle, and they showed up on the last possession of the game. And we'll get to the Bears side of that here in a little bit, but last possession of that game, they had to end the game not once but twice. You could argue the pass interference call at the end of on the fourth down was not legitimate. I would argue it was ticky tack. I mean, if you want to go by the letter of the law, maybe you call that, but I did not see that as the sort of penalty that you're going to call in that situation on a prayer of a throw from Caleb Williams. Either way, the Lions had to get that stop. Then they had to get the stop at the end of the game where Zadarius Smith comes up huge. DJ Reader was huge in this game. I look at the Lions and they keep checking boxes, and this is a different box to check than they checked a couple weeks ago against the Jaguars and they checked last week against the Colts. To me, this was all right, things aren't going right. And this is bound to happen in the playoffs at some point. X, Y, and Z go wrong. You have a few players go down, and how are you going to respond? And I think we saw the proper response from the Lions. The Packers just look very complete right now. And I think one thing, if you look at where they were in the stretch run of last year and then into the playoffs, they were leaning a lot on Jordan Love and their passing game. And I think what we're seeing now from the Packers is a more complete team. Defensively, they played really well. And they've always had like a good core of star players on defense. They've got, your Rashawn Garys. This year they bring over Xavier McKinney, who might be a defensive player of the year candidate, Jair Alexander. So they've got pieces on defense. But I think Jeff Hafley's done a really nice job bringing it together. You add to the offense with the run game, the physical presence that Josh Jacobs has brought to the run game and what he's able to do from a versatility standpoint. It just looks like a pretty complete Packers team. And again, this is Matt LaFleur doing things in the offseason that his team needed, going and getting Josh Jacobs, going and getting Jeff Hafley. They made some of the tough decisions to start to lean on younger players a little bit more on defense and phasing out Preston Smith a little bit. Obviously, he's now on the Steelers, and leaning a little bit more on a Lucas Van Ness. And this is a Packers team, again, that I think looks like maybe a more complete all-around team than the one they had last year that went in, won a playoff game in Dallas, and then went toe-to-toe with a really, really good Niners team. So, I see a complete Packers team. I see a Lions team that showed another gear on Thursday, and it's not that full throttle gear. It's the gear where you're stuck in the mud and you gotta pull yourself out of it. And then the Vikings are the Vikings. I think we've seen a lot of incredible things from the Vikings just from a program standpoint this year. In and they still have to play the Cardinals on Sunday, so we'll see how that goes. But in at two of the most critical spots in the field, quarterback and edge rusher, they lose maybe the two most important players their franchise has had over the last decade, in Kirk Cousins and Daniil Hunter. All due respect to Justin Jefferson, who's been around for half of that time, and they get younger. You could argue they've gotten more effective in some ways, and they've pulled through. And there was even a spot where they hit a rut there in the middle of the season where it didn't look like they were quite the same, and they've been able to pull out of that too. And big game for them on Sunday against the Cardinals. But overall, you look at that division, and it's going to be exciting down the stretch. And that starts this coming Thursday night with the Packers and the Lions. The Packers and Vikings play in Minnesota in Week 17, and the Vikings and Lions play in Detroit in Week 18. These teams have all played each other once. The Lions have swept the other two. They're 2-0 against the other two. The Vikings went into Lambeau and won, so they're 1-1. The Packers are 0-2 in this little scramble atop the NFC North, but it should be exciting the rest of the way.